1.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our City Council meeting for Tuesday, November the 18th. Ms. Hilbrook, will you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Kidder?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Mayor Pro-Tem Young?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Crocker.
Here. If you would, please rise and join me for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. Again, welcome everyone. Good to see a full house this evening. We've got lots going on, so we will jump straight into our items for the evening. We'll start with B1 on our agenda, announcements and reminders. Mr. Garza, do you have anything for us this evening?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have several announcements for you this evening. All city non-emergency offices will be closed on Thursday and Friday, November 27th and 28th in observance of Thanksgiving. Offices will reopen on Monday, December 1st at 8 a.m. Garbage normally collected on Thursday will be picked up on Wednesday, November 26th. Yard waste and recycling normally collected on Thursday will be picked up on Saturday, November 29th. Friday, November 28th, collections will continue as scheduled. In addition, the Victoria Public Library will close at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 26th, and reopen at 9 a.m. on Saturday, November 29th. On behalf of the police department, we want to remind the public that VPD will be hosting a lunch and learn for the public on November 19th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Community Center Annex. DTAR Healthcare System is sponsoring the event and will provide health information for people with diabetes, as well as guidance on when to know when it is time to go to the emergency room during the holidays. BPD will also be holding a Blue Santa toy drive on Friday, November 21st from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Target, located where Target is. This toy drive, I figured it was pointless to read the address, right? This toy drive is to collect toys and donations for the Region 3 Early Childhood Intervention Program. This program serves families with children from birth to 36 months with developmental delays or disabilities. I have quite a bit of employee recognitions, and we'll get to those after we honor our distinguished citizens.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's jump into then public and employee recognitions. We'll start with item B2A, which is a GIS Day proclamation. Ms. Hilbert.
Yes, sir. Whereas the science of geographic information systems connects people, regions, and systems, and whereas GIS is an important part of geography awareness, helping people collaborate and share knowledge so the systems we rely on work each day. And whereas the City of Victoria is committed to expanding GIS to the schools, general public in order to showcase real-world applications with GIS, and whereas having a dedicated day of GIS activities for students, citizens, and government leaders demonstrates the benefits of GIS in a unique and concentrated way. And whereas Geography Awareness Week is November 17th through 21st and promotes geographic literacy in schools, and whereas the National Geographic Information Systems Day is observed on November 19th, 2025, now therefore I, Duane Crocker, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do hereby proclaim November 19th, 2025 as GIS Day and urge all citizens to participate in GIS Day activities.
Mayor, City Council. City of Victoria GIS Division will be holding its annual GIS Day during the week of November 17th to the 21st. GIS Day is a global event and it runs concurrent with Geographic Awareness Week. This year we'll be attending 2 elementary schools, Hopkins and O'Connor, where we present to the 5th grade classes. The students will have opportunity to learn about geography and GIS through a PowerPoint presentation, a demonstration of the city's GIS website, an introduction to GPS units and how they integrate with GIS. After the presentation, we will take the students outside where they will participate in a geocaching activity. For all the students, we have an opportunity to locate geocache using a GPS unit. Each student will receive a GIS certificate along with a GIS day bag with the GIS items. We would like to thank CVB for assisting with those GIS materials. If you have any questions?
May I have a question? No? All right. Well, thanks for all you guys do, and appreciate y'all being involved in the schools. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is a Distinguished Citizens Award recognition. And Ms. Stribble, I believe this is yours.
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I told Jesus I would be quick, but I would be remiss if I didn't say a few words about the purpose of our Citizens Award recognition tonight. So each year, we have 3 city educational programs that the city does offer to our community at no cost. So I first want to give a round of applause to the staff members of Victoria Fire Department, Victoria Police Department, and Communications and Public Affairs, and really every single staff member who is represented here from each department, because it wouldn't be possible without those who put in the time and effort to host these events. Now for the fun part, why we're here. So we have 8 distinguished citizens who took the time and energy out of their lives, really, to learn about their local government. Everything from streets to public works to fire and PD. You know, there's so many things to learn about our local government, including city manager's office, right? Jesus has a slide that says, what does a city manager do? Well, you get to learn that through this program. There is so much to learn, and so we want to recognize those people here today. And so I'm going to call their names, and as I do, they're going to step up, receive their plaque, and I would like Jesus and Mayor, if you don't mind, to come and hand it out. Without further ado, and in no particular order, we have Mr. Steve Meacham. If you could just stand up here, and let's give him a round of applause. Sure. We already took a photo, but it's great if you can walk up right there. All right. Say hello and then head on back. Hi. Next, Miss Cynthia McConnell. Step on up. You don't have to say hello. I mean, if you want to. But let's give him a round of applause. And then you can head on back. You know what? We're going to make it a thing. You can keep it. Yes, ma'am. Those are for you. We need walk-up songs at this point. All right. Miss Carolina Rodriguez. Miss Karen Brown. Love it. Miss Amber Countess. Congratulations. Mr. Timothy Miller. Congratulations. Miss Amanda Reyes. Congrats. And then, of course, rounding us off is Dr. Phyllis B. Canyon. I expected nothing less. All right, let's give them all a round of applause.
All right, so I'll keep it going, Mayor, if it's all right with you. I want to take a few minutes to recognize several employees who recently were promoted, in addition to acknowledge a couple of recent awards and victories that some of our personnel earned. As I call your name, please rise. I always feel weird saying that. But if you wouldn't mind standing so that we can all show some love. I want to start off by acknowledging the recent promotion of Eli Briseño. There it is. There he is. He was recently promoted to our building official for development services. In this role, he will oversee the city's building inspection, permitting, and plan review functions. He will ensure compliance with building codes, coordinate with city departments and external stakeholders, and provide technical expertise and guidance to staff, contractors, and the public. Eli started his career with the city in 2005, serving as a development specialist and later as a combination inspector. He then decided to leave us for a bit, where he held roles with the city of Alamo Heights and in the private sector before returning to the city in 2021 as our assistant building official, and of course now has officially taken over our building official job. So congratulations, Eli. I want to recognize Sam Hankins. But there you go, Sam. Sam was recently promoted to communications manager for our communication and public affairs department. In this role, she will support the communications director in developing and implementing citywide communication strategies that promote transparency, engagement, and trust between the city and the community, managing day-to-day operations and ensuring consistent, accurate, and engaging messaging across all city communication channels. Sam began working for the city in 2020 as a city's communications specialist, and I'm sure we could all agree has been a vital member of our writing everything. So Sam, congratulations. I want to recognize Elijah Ramos. I joke that I felt I just did something for him. But he's our recreation coordinator and was recently elected to serve as the East Region representative of the Texas Recreation and Park Society's Future and Young Professional Branch. I hope that has an acronym. In this role, he will attend Texas Recreation and Park Society meetings representing the East Region, coordinate with local universities to inform prospective parks and recreation professionals of educational and networking opportunities, and help to provide new and upcoming professionals with the tools to succeed in parks and recreation. Elijah has worked for the City of Victoria for more than 2 years, and he holds a Certified Parks and Recreation Professional Certificate, which was the reason why he was acknowledged not too long ago from the National Recreation and Parks Association. So he's a rising star in Parks and Rec, and we're fortunate to have him on our team. Congratulations, Elijah. On the employee front, I want to conclude the recognitions by acknowledging and recognizing our municipal court clerk, Rebecca Franson, who recently earned her Level 1 clerk certification from the Texas Court Clerks Association in conjunction with the Texas Municipal Courts Education Center and Texas State University. To earn the certification, a student must complete 40 hours of education and pass a 3-part exam that covers topics such as trial processes and procedures, traffic law, court ethics, post-trial processes, professionalism, and communication. Rebecca began working for the City of Victoria in July of 2024, and as always, we're grateful for the investment of time and energy that our employees put towards their professional development. So Rebecca, congratulations. I have 2 more. These are not individual awards, but team recognitions. And so I want to announce that we, the city, have earned 2 statewide awards from the Texas Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors for its video productions, which of course is not anything new. I kind of feel like our communications department receiving awards and being recognized is becoming a norm. And I think that is awesome and obviously speaks highly to Ashley and her team. We earned the third place in the interview, talk show, or podcast category for Town Talk, the city's podcast featuring city officials and local leaders. Town Talk, which recently wrapped up its first year of production, previously won an award of excellence from the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers. So congratulations for everybody involved with our podcast, Town Talk. In addition, the Communication and Public Affairs Department, in collaboration with the Victoria Police Department, earned 3rd place in the use of humor category for Beetlejuice Halloween PSA, in which Beetlejuice and Lydia go over safety tips before trick-or-treating. The Communications and VPD team has been recognized previously for its Halloween PSAs, earning a Tattoo Award in 2023 for a Ghostbusters-themed PSA. And so I'm already looking forward to what we're going to do for Halloween next year. And so congratulations, Ashley, to your team, and of course, Chief, to you and your personnel as well for the hard work in that endeavor. And lastly, I think we have a couple of pictures for this one. So this was really neat. So the city of Victoria actually participated in the first ever East Region Texas Recreation and Park Society Maintenance Rodeo. And so this is an event that brings together Parks and Recreation professionals and to literally compete in a slew of different maintenance components. This year it was held in Missouri City, and we actually brought home first place in the truck and trailer event. So first time participating in the event for our staff, and they came back with first place. In addition to the truck and trailer competition, several of our team members also showcased their skills in other events, including zero-turn mower, backpack blower, nail driving, and plant identification. And so this stuff gets real serious, right? And so I can't wait. I can't wait for them to make it to the Olympics and bring back the gold medal. Please join us in congratulating all of our amazing employees for representing the city of Victoria with excellence. And it actually keeps going. So our team actually continues to climb up and will now participate in the state maintenance rodeo in February being held in Corpus Christi. And so we hope that they represent our city and our region well in that competition. So excellent. There you go. That's all I have for this evening, Mayor.
That's all. There's lots going on, obviously, so thank you, and congrats to all those recognized. All right, we will move on to items from council. I know we have a couple this evening, so we'll start with the one that's listed, which is Dr. Young. I believe this was your item, if you want to address that.
It was. I've had multiple citizens over a course of months plus contact me in regards to feeding of feral cats. And it's actually expanded beyond that because it says feral cat colonies. However, it could be stray dogs and stuff of this nature. And the concern, the reason why we're here today is that we've used education and communication and yet haven't gotten anywhere with that. And there's some frustration that's brewing up in some of the public. And thus, I did ask Mr. Sloat to come here, and Ms. Lacey, we discussed bringing up here for some education and then talking about what our options are in regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I would just like to take a second to introduce Mark Sloat. He is the current director of our Animal Services, and he is a subject matter expert on this topic. So I invite him up here to speak to you and give you a little bit of information this evening.
Mr. Sloat, welcome.
Appreciate it, Mayor and Council. Happy to be here to help.
Thank you.
As the council member said, we've discussed this problem. It's been an ongoing issue. From our point of view, there's a lot of problems with feeding any animal in a public space. I think pets and animals are best kept at our own homes and cared for on our own properties. With that being said, I put together a little overview of why we have a problem with it in Victoria. And this is anywhere, but when you're feeding cats, or especially cats in this particular reason, or this particular case in public areas, as you can see from this picture, I just searched feeding loose cats. These are internet images that I put together. Not hard to find. There's tens of thousands of them. When you're leaving trash out, you're leaving the cats out. Animal control is responsible for picking up dead and injured animals in the city and the county. And my officers don't like picking up, dead domestic animals or wildlife, but we pick up a high number of, especially cats, raccoons and skunks at cat feeding stations. And you can tell they're cat feeding stations because they all look the same. There's cat food, there's litter from, depending who's feeding, some leave plates or cans or whatever behind, or kibble. So as the slide says, I'm not going to read you verbatim what they say, but people that are feeding the cats mean well. They do really want to help the animals. They do want to do something good for the cats. But as you can see, again, I don't know what city this is, but every time we do this, you start getting a congregation of cats that probably aren't spayed, they're probably not neutered, they're most likely not vaccinated. And we have skunk rabies in Victoria, we have rabies all over Texas. And so when we have a congregation of any kind of animal, where they're, especially domestics that aren't vaccinated, you know, it's just leading to a potential problem. We have traffic hazards with people having to swerve around them. I was at Double Dave's one morning at about, I don't know, it was probably 6 o'clock. And there was a cat being fed right outside Double Dave's on Navarro, and cars were swerving around it. So it's ridiculous that people think this is better for the cats when we're putting them in harm's way. So the other issue is the unsanitary conditions. We have, you know, issues here with vultures coming down and feeding on the cat food. Sometimes they're feeding on the dead animals also, which also creates a traffic issue. And just the unsanitary conditions left behind when people don't pick up their plates or their cans or whatever they're feeding them in. Most of our feeders now are just feeding dry kibble loose on the sidewalk or on the street, so we're not having as much of a trash issue. So that helps, but it still brings the cats into those areas. For me, as a rabies control expert, I never want to see domestic animals and wildlife mixing. And when you see some of these cats being fed here in Victoria, especially by the storm sewers, you'll see the raccoons come up. They know the cars, they know the time. They got their Rolexes on that tell them it's feeding time. This is a problem because some of these cats that are being fed are not feral. They are tame. They may be an owned cat or a community cat that then goes home to a family. Cats are super manipulative, so they'll have multiple feeders and multiple people loving on them. And the last thing we need is a domestic-friendly cat that's been exposed to rabies or any of the other numerous diseases that cats can get from raccoons, which would include pan-luke, parvo, and distemper. There are multiple shelters across Texas right now that this summer have dealt with horrible cases of distemper. And in a sheltering environment, if that was to hit us in Victoria, I don't have the funds to treat all those animals. We'd have to euthanize in mass quantities. When it hit Austin a few years ago, it was distemper from the wild is where we think it came from. And it cost us thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to treat those animals, and we still lost quite a few of them. It also, why we're here, it causes neighborhood complaints and conflicts. I was just in the neighborhood where some of this has been a problem, and there's no reason, the same way we don't, you know, I keep telling people we need to be able to walk down our streets of Victoria without being chased by dogs and harassed by cats or tripping over cats or cat food. One lady that called us this summer had slipped on the cat kibble that was on a sidewalk. She just didn't see it, and it was like, you know, beads under her feet slipping. So there's a lot of ways it negatively impacts the public when you allow feeding on public roadways or public sidewalks. Again, if they want to feed cats or loose cats, feed them in their yards, feed them on private property. But again, we have a city ordinance. If you're caring for an animal, it needs to be spayed and neutered. Cats have to be spayed or neutered if they're loose, and they have to be vaccinated. State law is that they have to be vaccinated for rabies. So when these people can't even walk in their neighborhoods because they don't feel safe, from cat kibble to dogs, it's a problem, you know. So I can address the dog issue because we have firm ordinances on that. It's very easy. It's a lot easier. I shouldn't say it's easy. It's easier. But when we allow the cats to be fed anywhere, there's no enforcement action, you know, especially now that most of them are picking up their trash. I think a couple of them got littering citations. But right now I have no enforcement capability. We do have a TNR program here. Victoria TNR does a wonderful job. They're part of the reason I don't have a lot of loose cats that are brought into the shelter. But if you're feeding cats randomly every day and not trapping and neutering and spaying and neutering, healthy cats make healthy babies, and they make lots of healthy babies. In the South, we're blessed with 2 seasons of kittens, whereas up north they have 1 season of kittens. And so all these cats that are fed, if they're not spayed or neutered, they're super healthy and they can have more babies. It's just the way life works. So again, from my point of view, I'm in support of animal services, in support of some kind of ordinance being written to at least disallowing feeding of any animal, not just cats, but especially cats on public right-of-way. That would include sidewalks, driveway approaches, anything within the easement of the city streets. Any questions?
Even with a TNR program, there's still issues as far as wildlife coming in with the potential diseases, correct?
There is. The problem, I mean, there's both sides of the issues. Cats do some of their own predation on certain things like lizards and birds. But, you know, we've all heard the complaints about dogs that are out roaming and killing cats. And a lot of these dogs are going to the very cat stations where the cat feeders are feeding. And again, the dogs shouldn't be out chasing cats, but it's like one problem compounds another. And most of these cats are fed either late at night or in the morning, which is also when our high-risk rabies suspect animals eat. So, you know, it all feeds the whole circle of life thing there. And it just would be a lot easier to deal with if they weren't allowed to feed publicly.
And in terms of what you've seen elsewhere and, you know, your experience, I mean, what's the best solution to address, for a community to address this type of issue when it comes up?
I think limiting the feeding is the number one thing. You know, for animal control, it's very hard to tell if a cat's spayed or neutered. I know there's one out in front of the courthouse, and I was informed by Miss Lacey that it is spayed. She's got a collar, she's got her shots. But, you know, we can't catch a cat and see if it's spayed or neutered. So the loose cat issue is kind of a problem, the fact that they're allowed. But cats are super hard to contain. You know, you can have an 8-foot fence and they zip right over it. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. But in most cities that have this problem, the feeding is what they stop. I will tell you, in my previous employment, we pushed for the same type of ordinance and we couldn't get it passed because the cat feeders were adamant that they needed to be out doing what they're doing. Most of your big animal welfare groups recommend, you know, cat colonies in particular, if they're managed, to be fed and everything spayed and neutered. Any new cats that come in need to be trapped and removed. If they're friendly, they can be removed and put into homes. If they're not friendly, they can be put back out. But I can speak to experience. In Austin, we had a colony of over 400 cats in a mobile home community. The trapper, or the person that was supposed to be trapping and neutering was removed, and somebody else was put in to manage it. And in 5 years, she had that colony down to 60 cats. She took out the friendly ones, got them adopted. Some of them just disappeared, but she only fed those cats for counting and for spay neuter trapping. So when you are on top of it that way, it makes it a lot easier. But we've got, you know, some people are feeding. We've seen cat stations here, and I call them stations. It's just where they're feeding because they feed in the same spots all the time. There was one on Navarro, I think we counted 15 cats almost every day. And that's a lot of cats and they're coming across Navarro to eat. You know, where every street they're feeding on has pretty high-speed traffic, and that's where we're picking up the dead animals. And it just gets really tiring for my staff to be out there picking up these beautiful animals that are hit by cars just because somebody's feeding on a busy roadway.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
I have probably a foolish question, but it's for Ms. Lacey. I'm just wondering whether feeding a cat in a place where you shouldn't be feeding it, whether that's littering. That's putting something that doesn't belong in that spot. I'm just wondering if we can expand or, you know, look that direction.
It doesn't really qualify as littering under our code primarily because where's the proof of that? That's something that's going to disappear no matter what. Eventually, if a cat doesn't get it, a raccoon's going to get it, ants are going to get it, something else. If it's trash, like Mr. Sloat said, like paper plates or cans or things like that, yes, absolutely, we can consider that littering. But if it's just a pile of food on the ground, that's going to be a really hard standard to prove of littering because that's going to disappear almost immediately. So we don't generally consider that particular one thing to be littering because the standard of proof would be so difficult for us.
So the further issues along with that and what gets brought in, and he was talking about skunks and raccoons and possums, but there is a colony of vultures that are coming in and eating stuff in the neighborhoods. They roost on people's roofs, their cars, they leave feces. There are some other personal property issues that are becoming painfully aware because of this, I guess, ill-intended consequences.
Yeah, the one house we were at, you know, they have scratches on their vehicles from the vultures landing on them. We have photos of one cat feeder with the vultures standing next to her waiting for her to leave so they can eat the cat food. And again, you're putting a human element, you know, you're getting these vultures in particular, it's they're getting very acclimated to where this is their only food source now. They don't actually go out and do what they're supposed to do in nature, which is clean up carrion. You know, so when we start feeding them and take them out of their normal habit and their normal genetic code of what they're supposed to do, they get habituated to that's all they look for. So, you know, the vulture eating the squirrel on the side of the road is how nature's supposed to work, not the vulture eating the cat food next to the dead cat that was hit by a car. They're going to go the easy route. You know, they're just like us. If they get food easy and free, it's all good, right? You know, nothing better than somebody else's food that they paid for. So we're habituating, especially the vultures, and they have a very good communication system because it keeps growing. The number of birds is growing. It started, I think, at 4, maybe a year and a half ago, where I've seen pictures now where there's 8 to 10. And these are not small birds. You know, you think about a vulture, they're big, very grand birds. You know, you got about a 4-foot wingspan on them, and everything they eat comes out later, and it's on their house or their garage or whatever. And they wouldn't be there if this cat feeder would move. But
Mr. Delgarza.
I would like to see if we can approach it from a different angle, get a health department official or a public health doctor in here to see how this affects humans with all the animals being affected and all the other, raccoons and possums and skunks coming in the picture and the vultures, how it can affect humans and attack it from that angle.
well,
It's a health hazard in some shape, form, or fashion if there's feces everywhere, and there is. I've already seen it. I've already driven down there. I think we need to get a opinion of a professional health.
your biggest health hazard right now is the rabies risk.
Well,
That's
we need to get
that's
a
the most
doctor
deadly
in
health
there.
hazard we have here. But
Pretty
you also
big
have
health
avian
hazard.
flu possibilities when you're talking about birds being on the scene. So.
And I understand that, Mr. De La Garza, but it can be remedied. We are not the first nor only city that has this. And there are, through research, multiple cities that do already have ordinances in place, possibly, to restrict this. And so it would take care of the problem already.
Exactly.
And we're not asking
but-
people to
but
get
it-
rid of their cats,
No.
you know, or contain them. We're just asking them to not feed on.
But if we could attack it from more than one angle, that would help.
If need be, absolutely.
I mean, so if we could arrange that in a near future meeting where a public health official come in and say, hey, this is the problem when you have a lot of rural animals and wild animals coming in feeding from the same trough.
Sure, it's certainly some more information. I'm going to ask staff to come up with an ordinance based upon looking at some of the others anyway.
Yeah, that'll be
So
good.
I'm going to ask that today already. So it may be a moot point, but any more information may be certainly solidify our stance if everybody chooses that way.
Well, this has been enlightening. On my time on council, we always have tried to stay ahead of problems instead of reacting to them. And Dr. Young has brought this to our attention several times.
Yes.
And to hear that the populations are increasing is very disturbing to me because it's disappointing that this is a problem we didn't get out ahead of. And so,
Yeah, I think we tried to let human nature and the community spirit and neighborliness kind of answer this, and hopefully everybody would just listen, but if it hasn't come to that point, so here we are looking at a potential ordinance.
All right. Mr. Sloat, as always, thank you for your information. Appreciate it.
If I would like to ask Ms. Lacy, and I'm happy to meet with you and staff to see if we can look at some of the things that other municipalities have done in regards to feral cat feeding and all animal feeding. And if we can look at something, draft something, and bring it back to council at some future meeting.
Sure, absolutely. We can certainly put something together for you. And to Mr. De La Garza, I can certainly reach out to our David Gonzalez. What is it?
David Gonzalez, yes.
Yes, to get his opinion on this sort of thing also for you and bring all that information back to y'all at a future meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
And I would just like to add, if I may, just a reminder that, of course, we, the city, currently don't enforce our animal control-related ordinances. We, of course, have an agreement with animal care services with the county, and they handle the enforcement aspect of it. And so as we do develop these recommendations and have these conversations, it's important that we're mindful of who's going to be enforcing these and whatever resources we're applying towards them.
Understood.
Good point. Okay,
Thank you.
so then I believe, Mr. Lofgren, you had another item from council?
I do. Many years ago, many of the services that we take for granted now didn't exist in the county or the city. And years ago, people in the county, both county residents inside the city limits and outside the city limits, wanted services. At the time, there was a county judge and a mayor that got together and said that they didn't want to duplicate services, so they came to agreements. The city and the county came to agreements, and one of those was an agreement about the library. And the agreement was that the city would run the library. The county owns the building. Now, it's the Victoria Public Library. It's not a city library. It's for the whole county. It costs us $2.6 million to run it. It's award-winning, like many of the things in our beautiful city. We need a new roof. I have heard that the county has discussed in closed session about the roof, but I would like the county as a tenant and as a county resident, I would like the county commissioners to discuss it in open court. I'd like to know how each one of them feels about the roof for the library. We need a new roof. Have we heard anything new from the county?
So all I can tell you is that we're planning on proceeding with fixing the roof, and we plan on bringing an item to council in December, awarding the contract to fix the roof. Any other conversation you may want to have about the arrangement with the county, we can have an executive session.
I would like to point out to the county that if it's their building, if it was empty, would they just let it go to pot and not fix the roof?
All right,
That's it.
there we go. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lofgren. One item that I have, and this is more housekeeping matters, on your agenda, item D4 is going to move off of consent and into the action items portion of the agenda. And then item D5 has been pulled from the agenda by staff. That one wasn't quite ready for prime time, if you will. So, all right. With that, then, we will move on to citizens' communication. I have two cards, and the first one I have is Mr. Adam Daughtry. Good evening, Mr. Daughtry. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor. Today I want to talk about Turning Point USA, but not as an outside organization coming into our community. I want to talk about it as a student-driven program led by, built for the young men and women of Victoria. TPUSA succeeds when students take ownership of it. Its importance is simple: to empower young men and women, to empower Americans to think critically, engage civically, and speak confidently for themselves. At times, many feel pressured to stay quiet. This program gives them the space to ask questions and build real dialogue with each other. On Wednesday, November 19th, between 12 and 5, Turning Point USA will be here in Victoria. They will be at the Texas A&M University Common Space area, where both the university representative as well as the high school representative will be there present. They will engage directly with students of Victoria College and Texas A&M. Field reps will be present, but the real focus is on their students, their chances to learn how to organize, communicate, and build something meaningful for their campuses. We have thousands of young men and women across the Crossroads region who are watching the direction of this city and the nation. Many want to step forward, but they don't always know how. That's why I'm challenging them, not the adults, but the young men and women, to take charge of this program. Form charters, chapters, in their high schools and colleges throughout the region. Create spaces where they can make debates openly, challenge each other after respectfully, and grow into the leaders our community will rely on. And in the spirit of Charlie Kirk's message, students should remember this: strong ideas grow when they're challenged. That's why I encourage our young adults to question their public officials, ask why they make certain decisions, hold them accountable. If you disagree with this direction your leaders take, use your voice. Get out and vote. Civic participation is your right and your responsibility. For leadership, it's a two-way street. So I'm challenging every public official to step up, mentor these young men and women, support them, guide them, ensure that principled public services look like. Let's be clear, this is not a Republican, this is not a Democrat program. This is a student program built around development, informed, confident young Americans who value their constitutional rights and help civil dialogue. If you empower the students, speak boldly, lead fearlessly, and think for themselves, then the future of Victoria will be stronger than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daughtry. All right, and the second card I have is from Michael Vonderow. Welcome, Mr. Vonderow.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Michael Bondro. I live on 2107 North Bend, Jordan. I'm talking about dangerous dogs. There's a group of dangerous dogs, and what they do is they attack mail carriers and police officers. Just Saturday, about 4:35 p.m., some dangerous dogs. It was 4 of them on Brandywine and the Fleetwood Edition. They attacked a mail carrier and attacked some police officers, and the police officer had to shoot one dog with a gun, and the second one, he wounded him, and they had to use the baton stick. And in the past, the police officers had to use tasers or whenever they can. And I think the answer is for animal care services to just give them 4 tickets. Animal care services do not have to witness it. They can use video from the cameras, from the police officers. You know, in the past, they had to witness it or they wouldn't give a ticket. I don't know if it's still the same, but I do think we need to protect the police officers. I think they should be able to get out of their patrol car without being attacked by these dogs. I think the answer is to take those 4 dogs and just pull out all their teeth and just give it back to them, you know. And then they could just eat puree for the rest of their life. Then you don't have to worry about it. We have irresponsible pet owners that refuse to take care of it, and they have no intention on it. On 2207 North Jacker, there was 29 dogs. You know, he's a dog hoarder, and Animal Care Services, they did get 11 of them. And there's dog feces and stuff all in the front yard, and the dogs can jump out because the fence ain't high enough, and they have no intention of fixing it. And he really don't appear to care about the dog. So I don't know who's responsible to make sure those fences get up, if that's code enforcement, or environmental, or the health department. But I would like to have the dog owners accountable, because they get those $25 tickets or $75 tickets from the animal control, and the municipal court judge or the JP, they don't even know about it, you know, and there's warrants for their arrest from tickets they never paid. And I think the answer is just for the police department and animal care services just to make rounds and just lock them up and put them in jail. They don't care about the laws, and education is not the answer. Everyone knows you got to use a leash. You know, enforcement is the answer, and they don't mind paying a $25 ticket or a $75 ticket and letting them loose. But I would like a law to protect the police officers, like aggressive dog on a cop, $500 fine, and just give them 4 tickets. That'd be $2,000, because the city of Victoria is not enforcing everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bundler. Okay, that will close out citizens' communication for the evening. We'll move on to Section C, items with public hearings, and we have one item, and it is item C1.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending the 2025-2026 budget for the City of Victoria and carrying forward encumbrances outstanding at September 30th, 2025.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an annual housekeeping item that we take care of each year. So we're talking about here is in this process of carrying over encumbrances from fiscal 25. We have legal commitments consisting of contracts and purchase orders that are unfulfilled basically as of the end of the fiscal year. So what we do is we review these with staff to determine what needs to be carried over, what's pending invoices, et cetera. And once we have that list cleaned up, we can present it to council to do this budget amendment. It doesn't have any impact on what's undesignated fund balance for working capital. When we go through the budget process and do our projections, we assume anything encumbered is spent. So what this will show up as is a separate line on our financials as a designated fund balance. And again, it's presented as a budget amendment as a matter of financial transparency. Included a list of all the purchase orders that were being carried over. These are the various departments that are impacted. Overall, it's about $30.3 million. You'll see starting there with Fund 1215, our Community Center Venue Tax Fund, down to 3046, the Utility Construction Fund for Water. Most of these are primarily construction-related projects. There's about $26 million there. And then you can see some of the major ones there listed to the right. So are there any questions?
Any questions regarding the budget resolution? No. Thank you, Mr. Yanushek, appreciate it. So with that then, I will open up the hearing with respect to item C1. Is there anyone who wishes to address council on this matter? Please come forward at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain any motions with respect to this item.
Motion to approve item C1.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for approval. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And C1 is passes, or has passed. So we'll move to the consent agenda, again, as a reminder, minus item 4 and item 5 under the consent agenda. Ms. Hilbert.
Yes, sir. Item D1 is adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on November 4th, 2025, and the special meeting held on November 12th, 2025. Item D2 is an ordinance amending Chapter 14, Section 8 of the City of Victoria Code of Ordinances to levy and collect fees for liquor sales within the city as authorized by state law. That item's on second and third reading. Item D3 is an ordinance amending Chapter 24, Section 22 of the City of Victoria Code of Ordinances to make changes to the fees administered by the Public Health Department. Item is also on second and third reading. Item D6 is a resolution approving an amendment to the contract with Fundabounds Incorporated for Pine Street Park for park improvements in an amount not to exceed $3,000 for a total contract amount of $365,745. Item D7 is a resolution amending resolution number 2025-124, awarding the contract for the demolition of Riverside Park Building Foundation to Coastal Bend Demolition in the amount of $167,500. Item D8 is a resolution authorizing the filing of a grant application for the Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission for a statewide emergency radio infrastructure grant in an approximate amount of $650,000 to fund the replacement of the City of Victoria's existing Motorola GTR base stations. And item D9 is a resolution approving an amendment to the services agreement with New-Gen Strategies and Solutions LLC, or New-Gen, for the development of stormwater drainage and wastewater rate structures to include additional coordinating responsibilities and to extend the contract term.
Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. Do I have a motion with respect to the consent agenda as read?
Yeah, move.
Second.
There you go.
Well, I don't know what you moved for. I'm assuming approval.
Yes, I was going to move to accept as read.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passed as read. Then we will jump back up to item D4.
Item D4 is a resolution approving the FY 2025-2026 annual downtown TERS number 1 budget.
Good evening, Ms. Williams.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have tonight a TERS budget for your consideration. This is the first time that we have brought the TERS board budget, the downtown TERS board budget to you for consideration, and that is simply because now that they have some funds in there, they would like to spend them. So we're gonna go back, do a little background history, and then I'll dive into the budget after that. So what is a TERS? TERS is a tax increment reinvestment zone in its designated area where property tax revenue increases are captured and they're reinvested into the zone, in just that zone, for public improvements and economic development. The TERS was part of the recommendation out of our downtown master plan to help us continue on with the efforts of putting in new infrastructure in downtown with the downtown master plan recommendations. So this is trending very well, and it's going to be very good for downtown and keeping that master plan going and alive, which, by the way, we are 5 years through that 10-year master plan. So with that, those funds are going to be looked at using for infrastructure, streetscapes, economic incentives, and hopefully attract some private investment and create jobs ultimately in downtown. It is developed with a partnership model. There are multiple entities that contribute to the TERS, and that is, of course, the City of Victoria, the Navigation District, and Victoria College, and all of those contribute to the TERS. It was established in 2021, of course, to revitalize downtown, and it benefits the entire community as we see downtown continue to grow and be thriving. Through those partnerships and those local entities, the zone has successfully captured tax increments to fund some transformative projects, and I'll talk a little bit more of those later. The model has enabled Victoria to leverage public investment to attract private development, specifically housing. We have had some discussions about housing in downtown and the importance of that to help keep our businesses alive. And then also, we look to reinvest that tax revenue directly into the zone, of course, and it ensures that growth, generating more revenue and compounding on itself over the years as the property values increase and you continue to capture that increment. So when the TERS was adopted back in 2021, there was a financial plan and a project plan adopted at that same time. The financial plan consisted of the term of the lifespan, which is 25 years of the TERS. It was based off of that 21 baseline property value of $67.4 million of all the properties that are within the boundary. And then it had a projected revenue of $5.9 million. That was back in 2021, of course. The projects that were listed in that plan that were adopted were parks and streetscapes enhancements, such as landscaping, urban design, recreational benefits. There was infrastructure development, such as roads or utility lines, if that ever came a need in the future. Economic development grants, such as incentive grants to help stimulate new business growth or job creation in the zone, and then some developer reimbursement if we wanted to see those public improvements carry through whenever they build a new building in downtown. So operational costs also is a factor because when the TERS was recommended from the downtown master plan, the makeup of the TERS would essentially hopefully help support administration costs of the master plan and the Main Street program as it grew further down the line. So for today's budget, the fund balance growth we have is at fiscal 25, it started a balance of $78,000. And that's with all the contributing entities. Then the ending balance is $141,000, fiscal year 25, and the projected balance is $188,000. So with that, it does demonstrate a healthy growth in the downtown TERS, with strategic revenues building capacity for larger infrastructure projects while maintaining operational flexibility. As we continue to focus our efforts in downtown and be strategic about what projects or what incentives we give to developers, ultimately we want to see that dollar continue to grow so that we can hopefully finance or fund some of those larger infrastructure projects in the future. Here's just a visual representation of the revenues that we have collected through the three entities. We have, fiscal year 25 next to fiscal year 26 with the city, the navigation district, the college. We have a little bit of interest income, but then also we have a new revenue source there on the end, which is $50,000 from the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation. Some of you may remember that in previous budgets, in order to help with the budget for Main Street program, it was being, sort of paid through the sales tax budget. And part of that was the facade grant program. And so in efforts to try to still shift expenditures from the sales tax budget to the TERS, we have this facade grant as a one step forward. It is a seed money for the TERS to hopefully continue on with the facade grant program. They have both boards have discussed this opportunity and approved to continue on with this move from the sales tax board doing the facade grant to the TERS, focusing their efforts on the facade grant program. Total revenues increased dramatically from $65,000 over that to $220,000, and we saw that in a big jump this last year with the property values increase. And that, along with the sales tax revenue of $50,000, it gives us a little bit of a 235% increase in downtown, which was very shocking when we first saw it, when we saw the tax rolls come back this last year. So it's very good. Expenditures right now, the way we have the budget set up, since it is a very new budget, we've allocated funds in different buckets, if you will. We have $40,000 set aside for development reimbursement, $50,000 for facade grant. Of course, that came from the sales tax board. $60,000 for any park and streetscape improvements. $3,500 for board education and going to different economic development conferences. We have $10,000 set aside for economic development grants to help incentivize any new developers in the area, and then also $10,000 set aside for small projects. That's sort of how we've allocated all the funds. We don't have specifics on what they're gonna spend as of yet, but I will be bringing some of those projects back to y'all in December. There have been discussions about cross street lighting in downtown and also outdoor audio system in De Leon Plaza for ambient music as examples. So again, this is just another representation of what some of those improvements could be for those different line items that we have in the budget. I don't think there's anything I can add here other than it just is a different breakdown of those allocations. And then looking forward, the board has been very helpful and ambitious, and I think we have a great plan moving forward on how we're going to use these funds to build up the TERS funds and hopefully just continue to grow it so we can have more development in downtown. Are there any questions?
Questions from Ms. Williams? No? Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Then I will entertain a motion with respect to item D4.
I move we adopt D4.
I second it.
All right, I've got a motion and a second to approve the TERS budget. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And D4 passes. Okay, we will then move to item E1.
Item E1 is a resolution to cast votes for the appointment of a member or members to the Victoria Central Appraisal District Board of Directors.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The resolution before you this evening would cast votes for individuals nominated for the Victoria Central Appraisal District Board of Directors. So here's the kind of the election process that we went through. We're kind of made our way down to the second to last item to actually cast the votes for the resolution. And then we will return the ballot to the chief appraiser. We must do that by December 15th. So we did receive the ballot. The mayor as well as Mr. Garza received the ballot. And so it has two individuals nominated. So our own Councilwoman Jan Scott and Micah Patton. So our votes. We have 987 votes this year, and that is based off of the totals from 2024. And so as you can see, Victoria ISD holds the majority of the votes at 2,068. Victoria County has slightly more than us, so we are the three major players in the voting here. So the casting of votes, the government body may cast all its votes for one candidate or distribute the votes amongst the candidates. Historically, the city of Victoria had cast all of its votes for one city council member to be nominated to the board, but in 2023, the council changed directions and chose to start casting one vote for each nominee to maintain the ability to initiate removal of a board member if needed. So we have started doing that. Completely your choice. You can cast all votes for Ms. Scott. You can split them evenly. You can put one vote here, one vote there, whatever y'all would like to do. We just need to know so we can complete the resolution and move forward.
All right. Any questions on that? I mean, I'll just start out by saying, from my standpoint, it makes sense to continue what we've done the last couple of years, which is cast one vote for the non-city representatives on the board and the remainder of those votes for, in this case, it would be Ms. Scott. I think that was a good move on our part, and I don't see a reason to deviate from that unless somebody has strong opinions otherwise. It can convince us, okay? So if that's the case, then with 987 votes, so we would be casting, as I understand it, one vote for Mr. Patton and 986 votes for Ms. Scott. Is that correct, Ms.
Yes, sir.
Hilbert?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So do I have a motion to that effect? Other than Ms. Scott, I guess.
I'd rather not be the one to make the motion.
No. I move to that effect.
All right, I've got a motion and a second that the city will cast 986 votes for Ms. Scott and one vote for Micah Patton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is how the resolution will move forward. All right, we will jump then to our city manager's reports. Mr. Garza, you have a couple for us this evening, I believe?
We do, and I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious Assistant City Manager, Gilbert Reyna, to walk you through the first item, which is an update on our stormwater drainage utility. Mr. Reyna?
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
Oh, what? Oh, Junior, I'm sorry. Junior.
All right, son.
CPA.
It's always a challenge when him and I introduce each other, so it's all good. We have fun with it. Hi. How are you? It's a privilege to be up here. It's been a long time. I'm always in the background. I kind of like that, but I kind of enjoy this being up here too. But anyway, good evening. Last time when we were talking about this subject, it was back in September of 28. We were up here, Matthew was giving a presentation on the final report, and through that report, it came out with one tier structure across the board and a calculation. He explained the calculation and everything else. But one of the end results from that meeting was to let's go back and look at other options to maybe be more equitable. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So the purpose of this meeting is to follow up on that. Now, but before we go into it, I'd like to take a moment and kind of go over some of the high overview discussion that we had in the previous meeting, especially, let me see if I can use this without messing anything up, because everybody else. I want to talk about in previous area, because, well, you got to think about, too, we have citizens who are viewing this PowerPoint, and I think in our previous meetings, you know, Eugene did an excellent, outstanding presentation, but we're always talking about this area, and everybody's just taken for granted. Coming from me, I'm more of I got to see a visual thing on this stuff, so I just started to throw this slide in there. Just not only that, to take up a little more time for his, so he can be prepared for his next presentation. Impervious, it's just a surface that's not is allowed to absorb the water, okay? Such as building, structure, a pavement, concrete. And I hope you have any questions up here. That's pretty straightforward. Now, with that said, on our previous conversation with Nugent, we went basically, we dived into our parcels, the City of Victoria parcel. We try to look at the residential's parcels for square footage, and come up with a medium out of that population. And it was accounted for that the median ran around 3,200 square feet for a regular residential single house, okay? We decided to use it as our ERU unit, our base unit. In doing this calculation, how we can come up with a residential, i.e. also with a commercial side. So out of this whole process, we came out on residential ERUs of a total of 19,000.9, and non-residential is about 23.8. And we came out of a total of 43.7 thousand units at RU. When we do the math, I'll go through it in a minute. So we showed y'all a calculation that would generate $2.67 million. That's the $5. Remember, we talked about $5 across the board. All residents pay that, no matter what the size of their impervious area is. On the commercial side, it was a little slightly different calculation there. You take the actual square footage of the unit, divided by the 3,200 base that we use, then you multiply by the $5 to come up with a monthly fee. For example, I have an example there on the bottom. We talked about that, and then there was some talk about, well, what else is out there? In addition to that, I want to also remind y'all that we decided as a group that we're going to exempt Victoria ISD, part of this whole program, City of Victoria, of course, higher education and state, which are required by state law. Everybody else is in it. Now, I came up with 3 options for y'all to consider, okay? But keep in mind, remember we started off with 1 ERU equals 3,200, which is $5 to base. The first option, well, let's increase it to 1.25 times the base. We leave the $5 after we go digging in. Out of the 19.9 population, we find out approximately 0 to 4,000 square feet is a cutoff for the middle, and the rest is above the 4,000. Those are the 2-tier structure right there. So the base tier will be $5, flat out. The higher tier will be the 1.25. So you take the $5 times 1.25, you come up with 6.25. Does that make sense? That it keeps it equitable. So your total all revenue on this option is $1.28 million. And of course, you see the population, 71% on the base tier, 29% on the higher tier. Something like a 20-30. If you're wondering why I started with 2.5, I wanted to see what a 70-30 looked like. That I just backed into it. To give you other views, other options to consider, you have this other one. Let's say it's 1.5 times the value, and the larger one would be 1.5 times the base. So here again, you keep the base at $5, but the higher tier would be 1.5. So $5 times 1.5 would equate to 7.5. And again, after reviewing and analyzing the data, your break-even point on this type of scenario is your 0 to 4,800. And then anything over 4,800 will be your second tier. And you can see the population breakdown, 83% on the base and 17% on the higher side. And the same calculation done on option 3, but at the 2 times rate, okay? And you can see the math right there. That's when the base tier starts taking up the load. You can see how they're shifting the revenue. And the higher tiers is not generating that much money. And of course, you can notice your overall revenue starts to be decreasing because all the others tiers, all the ERUs are being put on the base. You're limited to something, so your revenues will start dropping. I'll show you this in a minute. For example, see on the right-hand side, the revenue variance? The full green one is the flat, $5 across the board. The second green is the 1.25. You're generating about $88,000 more at a 1.25 rate. And you decide to go to 1.5, you're going to generate about $104,000 more. Here's the kicker. When you start increasing it to $2 for that tier section, it starts to drop to $85,000. It's like any type of economy or mathematics, you start stretching something to the equivalent point, it breaks, there's always a middle point. The middle part is around the option 2. So far, does that make sense with how we're looking at the tiers? We can go on with the option 4, 5, 6, but there's no sense going that route. I just want to give you an observation of it. So bottom line, if you look at it, well, how do we compare with other regions in the state? Well, we're probably the bottom part compared to San Marcos, Corpus, Church, Syllable, Portland, $5 start. But we have another slide in here, which I like to show you other than that one. Compare ourselves with other cities who have tiers. You can see San Marcos has a 3 structure. Corpus Christi has a 3 structure. Syllable has a 4. Bernie has a 4. And keep in mind, to be transparent, some of these cities have been in this program for a while, so they got a mature system in place. We just start to walk with this system. Does that make sense? And the reason I have the red circle or square around it is because that's the kind of the medium. If you want to start looking at ours, well, we got $5. San Marcos got a $14. Corpus Christi got a 10. We got a 5. Syllable 7, and then Bernie's a 4, and we have a 5. But they have a 4-tier structure. Any questions?
Don't see any.
To recap. This is the original proposal we first came to you back in September 28. Hey, let's do a $5. This is just strictly residential, folks. Council, $5 across the board. That would generate $1.19 million at one time the rate. Option 1, which I just suggested, well, we can, instead of doing the one time, we do 1.25, create your 2 structure, which is net that 1.25, and you allocate your source of revenue according to what I show up there on the base of 71% from 0 to 4,000 and 29% for the higher ones from 4,000 on up. And you're generating 1.28, which is about $88,000 more. Of course, like I mentioned before, you can go to option 2 or option 3. From my personal observation, from my opinion, which doesn't matter, no, I think option 1, option 2 is your choices for me, mathematical and reason for common sense. But I'll leave that up to council. And that's it, folks. I'll be happy to answer any question, or we can just continue with this and talk about it. But that's where we're at right now. We'd like to get a feel where council would like to go with this. I'll shut up and listen.
Any comments on the tiered structure from anyone? Could you go back to that last slide?
Yes, sir. And by the way, everything works when I'm doing it. Okay?
Because James isn't here.
Oh, that's right.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Ms. Arania with regard to either the original proposal or any of the options that were thrown out there?
And may I add one more thing? I'm sorry, I apologize for that, Mayor.
No,
Just
you're fine.
keep one thing in mind. This is a starting process. It's not something you got to jump in right away. I mean, if you want to come back and restructure it later, you can always restructure it later. You can start simple and start getting, once you get the system in place and once it starts maturing, then you can start breaking out, okay, let's make it, now we know how things are working, because I can guarantee you this, once you start implementing, you're still gonna have people coming in. I don't think my square footage is this, and that's fine. They can go and bring some engineer studies or whatever it is, and we might have to change it. But once we have the system up and running 1 year, this revenue will be like this until we adjust it to the actual, because we didn't go out there and do every parcel. It just, we looked at it from the records on file, okay? Just keep that in mind, that's all. Thank you.
What's the thought for someone that owns the lot next door for 2 lots together? Would that be looked at as one account? Would that be 2?
It'd be one, well, we gotta go through the process, because right now, each one has a parcel. If we find out what structure we want, second step, the billing, how we gonna merge these 2 into that 1. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Because we need to figure out the structure itself. Once we say, for example, I'm not throwing which way we go. Say we go with a flat rate, $5, that's fine. That case, I try to get those 2 owners into 1. If that owner owns 2 of these plots, I'd be happy to have 1 bill going out to that person with identifying each parcel on that bill.
But if we went with the tiered structure, we would be looking at size And they'd either have two accounts or they could
I
combine
might,
them.
it depends, but we might have to do some background. And my point is, I want to make the customer simple. I don't want to have
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Right,
That's the
yeah.
objective.
Right, regardless of whether we consolidate how we bill or not, each parcel will still be looked at independently.
Yeah, it was simple. So
Okay,
I just want to make sure that's clear because this conversation can come across confusing to folks that might be listening, thinking that we would allow people that own two parcels only paying one. No, it's each parcel will individually be charged. One might be $5. If we go the flat rate, one is 5, one is 5. If one is bigger than the other, maybe one is 5 and one is $6.25. So
it depends.
what Gilbert's referring to is just how we bill
okay, that's what I
one
was
person
trying
that
to
might
get to.
own several properties.
That'd be a separate.
Thank you.
But correct.
Yeah,
So in each of these options, other than the original proposal, we only have, I guess, two subsets, if you will. One base tier and one higher tier. When we talked about this previously, there was a discussion of, we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating an administrative burden that was above and beyond what the benefits are. Can you speak to kind of why you decided just to go with two from the administrative standpoint? I'm assuming this was the better option versus the 4 we
Why
saw
go with-
there.
Instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 tier?
Yes.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, it's like, this is a new process. We still got to do some legwork. We still got to go into, I don't know how many parcels. We still got to look at each parcel because when we do the billing, we want to do as much accurate it is. So if I'm going through 5 tiers, that's a lot of intense work. On the other side, I can limit it to 2 tiers and just break it out from a gross standpoint. Okay, I can look at it real quick and look at the square footage without going through a lot of detailed work. Once we establish that, once you have a mature system in place, again, mature is a key point of this because, and we can talk about this, how that's easy, we do that, but you still think about staff in the background. We have the software to implement to make sure it works the way we want and flow the way this has never been done in Victoria, remember that. Not that it can't, but we need to get the process done correctly. So that's why I decided 2 tiers, not a 3, not a 4. But down the road, that's an option for council to consider once we see something growing, and I think that's a fair statement, I think.
personally, I still like just the 1 tier.
But that's fine too.
So, I see, based on this, the difference between the original proposal and option 1 being 88,000 a year, roughly, rough math, lawyer math. We just wing it a little bit. I mean, are we talking about, in terms of administrative costs, if that costs us $100,000 in administrative time to get 88, then that doesn't make sense to me.
No, I think if you look, well, I do respect option 1 or option 1 or the original. The other option is fine, but from a mathematically, it doesn't make sense from dollars perspective. So if you're gonna do a tier, I would do it only a 2 tier. I won't go into a 3 or 4 or 5, not right now.
And I guess what,
To answer your question, I'm sorry, Mayor,
yeah,
the time involved from the original one or the option 1, it'd be okay. I don't think it would be a nightmare, in my opinion. Now, Wesley might have a different opinion. I'm just kidding.
I mean, just, I just want to make sure that we're not spending hours and hours and hours of time, that we're paying salary on,
No.
that, for the delta being $88,000.
Now, we are going to spend some time looking at the data again, first of all. That's a given.
Yeah.
Because I want to be accurate about the revenue projection numbers. But once it's set up in our system, once we talk to our software program, really, you don't have an issue after that because you got it set up in the program. It's just a matter of adjusting, tweaking here and there. Now, if you go in and do a 3 or 4 right away, that's a little more difficult. I just say start simple and grow from there.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
This is residential only.
Correct.
Correct.
Commercial stays the same, like we mentioned earlier. That'll be based on the actual square footage divided by the one ERU, which we established at 3,200 square feet. That calculation will be multiplied by the $5. I gave you an example earlier. Only the residential will have 2 tiers.
I think commercial could make the same argument. You could have a large lot that is, first of all, it's already got the detention that we required them to build. And does that get deducted from?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We do, once we go through this process, when we have a marketing campaign, part of that will be some of the discussion talks to the citizens. If you but you gotta understand, if you have a detention, it has to be a certified detention engineer that you don't have any really drainage going on. It holds, but if you might have a detention with a gate or something else that let water overflow out, really, it's not 100% zero holding pond. So, but if somebody comes in and can show that from an engineer's perspective that this pond or whatever is strictly zero, it doesn't have effect on the system, it won't be charged. Yes, ma'am. We'll have a process in place for that.
Other comments?
Not much between the regular original proposal and option one. I mean, it's only $90,000 difference. I mean,
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's not a whole lot.
Agreed, which is why I was asking about, I mean, is it
Yeah,
worth going
exactly.
through,
Yeah.
jumping through the
And we
hoops
can
to
do
set
the-
these
we could-
up?
We could do the original and then see how it goes. I mean, because
That's what
we
mine
get everything in
says.
place, and then further down the line, if we need to change it, we could change it. But I think the original option is fine.
I tend to lean that way as well, just because I think it's simpler and easier to administer.
Yeah,
But I think the statewide average, if I'm not mistaken, was $6.
Yes,
Is that
about
correct?
6
Okay,
plus, yeah.
and we're still at 5 there.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Anybody else? Any other
No,
comments?
the ease of implementation is certainly a factor in me pointing towards the original proposal.
Okay. Did you guys get what you need from us then?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
think
And
so. I know.
I was going
I
to
know-
ask about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I know you had an opinion, Councilmember De La Garza, you know, about having different size structures, so curious on your take on it.
I like the two-tiered one, but the original's fine.
Okay.
And just for FYI purposes, we plan to bring back at a later future meeting, by late December or January, start the process with the ordinance. So, and what that involves is that basically it's just allowing, approving the start of the process. In other words, hey, we got to advertise, promote it, start a campaign, publicize, and make sure everything is in line according to state requirements. Right now, we're projecting maybe by April, if that's standard. But given the fact, it's still up to council if, when do you want to do it, okay? But I just going to give you a heads up on that. And thank y'all.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Junior's
Rain.
going to go sit down.
Let's go.
Mr. Garza, you have one more report for us this evening, I believe.
I do, actually. Is that Gilbert's water? Gilbert, you forgot your water.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Garza.
That's a warning for delayed game.
There's a flag.
All right. I'd like to spend a few minutes just providing an update on next steps regarding the two propositions that were just recently voted on and approved by our residents. And of course, they revolve around civil service and collective bargaining. I'm going to first focus on recapping civil service, followed by collective bargaining, and then share a combined timeline highlighting how I'd like to move forward. So quick recap on civil service. This requires the city to follow a consistent set of rules for hiring, promotions, pay, and disciplinary matters. I very intentionally underlined pay because in our particular case, it's unlikely that civil service will actually tackle pay because of the collective bargaining component of it. It is possible, as you heard from Frank last month, for communities to be civil service and not have collective bargaining. In those scenarios, Civil Service Commission would play a factor in conversations around pay. But in our particular case, the bulk of their work would be focused on rules for hiring, promotions, and disciplinary matters. What civil service would require us to do, and I already alluded to it, is the establishment of a Civil Service Commission, which is a 3-member body. What civil service does in effect is that it shifts the authority over personnel matters from management or the chief to the commission. And so it's quite a bit of work, quite a bit of rules that need to be established by the group and overseen by the group. As was mentioned by Frank last month, per HB 2713, it is impossible for a city of our size to ever repeal civil service moving forward. So this is something that we'll just have to make part of our normal routine. So next steps, we did obviously canvass the results of the election last week. And so per the law, we have 60 days to appoint the Civil Service Commission. And then once we appoint them, they'll obviously work hand in hand with staff as well as our outside legal counsel, which will be Frank Garza, to set up all of the rules in accordance with state law. And per state law, Civil Service Commission and all the rules ought to be in place within 30 days after the start of the next fiscal year, which is the end of October. But I think it just makes it, I think it just flows and rolls off the tongue easier to simply just think of it as we need to have it in place by the beginning of next fiscal year. I want to take a minute talking a little bit about the duties of the commission, as well as share with you the process on how somebody can serve or go about serving on the commission. Of course, once the commission is established, they'll elect a chairman and a vice chairman just for procedural sake and for sake of running the meeting. They'll have to appoint a civil service director. And so this technically can be any employee. And it's most common for that to be the human resources director, which would be my recommendation. That's what most cities do. Think of it as the individual who would be the point person for the administrative responsibilities associated with running the Civil Service Commission. And so this person would handle the paperwork, would work hand in hand with our city secretary's office for the legal postings of the meetings, so on and so forth. I mentioned it, I described it to the mayor this morning as, even thinking of it as how we handle all the other boards and commissions. We have, of course, Lisa in our Parks Department that handle, the oversight of the Parks Commission. Danielle handles some of the oversight with VSTDC. So this Civil Service Commission would become the board of HR. And Nina, surprise. Yeah. Some of the duties of the commission, as I've already alluded to, is to adopt the rules necessary to carry out the intent of the law, which includes detailing causes for removal or suspension, set physical and mental requirements, call for exams for applicants and promotions, and approve hiring and promotional list. And more importantly, they consider disciplinary appeals. And this is very important because on the disciplinary side, an employee technically has an option. And I probably should have started off by saying that this only applies to the fire department, just to be clear. The propositions that were voted on and were on the ballot solely applied for the fire department. And so in this instance, the Civil Service Commission would review if the employee chooses to have that appeal go in front of the Civil Service Commission, they would review those. The employee does have the option, though, to go straight to arbitration. And at that point, that's an expense that would have to be incurred half by the employee or the association that represents them and us. And so as you can imagine, the disciplinary aspect of it becomes a very critical component of the ongoing duties of the Civil Service Commission. And if that sounds very appealing to you, to be part of setting up all of those rules and be part of reviewing disciplinary appeals for the fire department, we are launching officially this week the application period, which will run until December 12th. And for background, per the law, as city manager, it is my responsibility to appoint and recommend the 3 members of the Civil Service Commission, and they must be confirmed by you, City Council. And so I'm carrying the weight of the process that I've chosen to follow over the next 60 days to bring to you a slate of individuals to serve on the Civil Service Commission. And so again, we're launching an application online that'll go live this week. As a matter of fact, it'll go live tonight, and that'll remain open until December 12th. My intent is to review applicants as they come and basically just take the rest of the calendar year to interview candidates. This is obviously a very important, a very big decision on all of our parts, and so I want to dedicate the right amount of seriousness, detail, and attention to the process that it deserves. And ultimately, my goal would be to bring that recommendation to you at the first regular city council meeting in January, which would be January 6th, and just right in time to meet that 60-day requirement. Just a couple of reminders, and so it is state law that requires these elements for somebody to be eligible to serve on the commission. So state law requires that somebody be a U.S. citizen. State law requires that it must be a resident of this, that the individual must have been a resident for the city for more than 3 years, must be over the age of 25, and not have held a public office within the last 3 years. Think of that as an elected position, and we did confirm with Frank, our outside counsel, that that does not apply for individuals that might serve on boards and commissions and things of that sort. The intent of that element is more focused on elected officials. In addition to the state law requirements, I am being very intentional with the kind of experience that I am looking for to serve on the Civil Service Commission. And so because of the responsibilities of the Civil Service Commission, there will be preference given to candidates that bring to the table experience in policymaking, as well as the implementation of such. There'll be preference for individuals with any legal background in labor relations, or just any law practice in general. I think there's a lot of common transferable skills that an attorney could bring to the table. I'll also give preference to candidates with HR background, since, as I've alluded to, there'll be some disciplinary measures attached to the responsibilities of the commission, as well as just conversations around processes for hiring, promotions, et cetera. And so I think it's appropriate to also give preference to individuals with HR experience. And lastly, I will give preference to individuals with high-level executive and management experience. It may go without saying that taking into account, all the different elements of the Civil Service Commission, I certainly want to make sure that the individuals on there understand the bigger picture focus here, which of course is the city of Victoria and our community as a whole. And so I think bringing to the table some of that executive management experience, high-level experience, I think would be beneficial to the group. And so if you are interested, if you're tuning in and you've met both the state law requirements and some of the preferred qualifications, we invite you to visit victoriatx.gov/civil service, or feel free to put your phone up to the screen and visit the site through the QR code. At that webpage, you'll be able to find more information on the commission in terms of its role, purpose, as well as some background information, which is basically the presentations that Frank gave last month. And I believe we also left up an FAQ that we had put out during the election process, and of course, the application itself. And the application will also, in addition to some basic information, contact information, things of that sort, it'll also ask a slew of questions to try and help us get a feel for an applicant's view of priorities of the city and involvement in community and city organizations. And it'll also provide an opportunity for somebody to upload a resume if they'd like to upload more information.
Can you remind
Any
me-
questions on that?
Yeah, can you remind me, are there term limits associated with this commission?
Oh, great question. Thank you. I should have put that up on a slide. So, or maybe I do have it on a slide. I do not have it on a slide. So, because this is the first time that we will be appointing a Civil Service Commission, law requires us to appoint the 3 individuals, one for 1 year, another for 2 years, and the third individual for 3 years, which creates the staggered process, right? Once we get past that initial structure, then everybody will serve for 3 years. So for example, I'm gonna make something up, I don't know, random individual serves for a year. When a new person gets reappointed, or if they get reappointed, that would be for a 3-year term.
But are there certain term limits, like you? can
Oh,
be
no,
applied?
sorry,
Okay, okay,
no
thank
term
you.
limits.
Any other questions?
Any questions on the civil service before I get into the collective bargaining
Yes,
part
if
of
there
it?
are no term limits, is there a procedure for them to be removed?
So the only procedure there, as Frank described last month, is to remove somebody for negligent, I forget the term. But it was basically, it would have to be of a negligent act that the individual would have taken. And that's the only way that the individual can be removed. An individual can't be removed because you disagreed with a decision, or because we didn't like the color of their shirt, or, you know, they decided to join the police department. You know, I mean, whatever the case may be, it has to be strictly based off of a negligent act.
Yeah, and that act has to be related to their duties as a commissioner, not just anything that they may do.
Okay, but they do get reappointed every 3, or somebody gets appointed. In other words, they serve a 3-year term. They may or may not get reappointed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the removal's based on negligence, not intentional malfeasance?
I have to go back and look at the actual statute on that one, sir. I don't
Okay.
remember off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
That's attorney talk. Would you like to serve on the commission? You can't.
I am a U.S. citizen, but I'm also an appointed or an
Yeah.
elected official, so.
I think he's over 25.
Yeah, barely, barely. Well, Jan, sorry, you can't do it. Any other questions on the civil service aspect of it? Okay. So because the civil service requires the appointment of the commission, you know, within 60 days, it goes without saying that, you know, my priority is going to be addressing that and addressing the civil service aspect of it. But of course, there was a second proposition that was passed as well related to collective bargaining. And very quickly, collective bargaining allows employee representatives the ability to negotiate with us to reach an agreement on wages, benefits, and working conditions. This is why earlier I underlined the item around pay on the civil service side, because collective bargaining will take the burden of those elements. Civil service rules must still be followed unless the contract specifically stipulates otherwise. And so most communities that have, all communities that have both civil service and collective bargaining end up actually negotiating or bargaining elements above and beyond what might be state law and civil service. And so as an example, civil service might strictly just suggest that we have to follow a very specific promotional process, very specific test. Well, collective bargaining allows both parties to agree on a more comprehensive process, such as an assessment center, which is a much more well-rounded, comprehensive way to go about determining somebody's skills and abilities. And so that's a very small example, but it can be confusing if you're starting it from scratch. But think of it as, you know, civil service has a standard state of rules that for the most part come from the state, and then collective bargaining gives you the ability to basically change all of that if you want to. It's kind of like our city charter, right? You know, we know that we have to follow certain state laws to run the city and how we do it, but then our city charter allows us to choose to do it differently. And so the CBA is kind of like a city charter as it relates to rules and the rules and policies around hiring, procedures, you know, et cetera. I hope that helps. I hope I didn't make it more confusing. One of the things that's important and that is very specifically laid out in state law is that both parties under duty to bargain in good faith. And that just means that we are, you know, meeting at reasonable times, reasonable locations. You know, nobody's trying to undermine, you know, the other. As Frank pointed out last month, it's really when either party takes some kind of extreme position that things can get very hairy, right? But if both parties are entering conversations in good faith, you know, with the right mindset, with the right priorities, you know, it typically, you know, goes on without an issue. However, there are times where there might be, you know, nothing happens and there might be an impasse or something to that effect. And so either party can request arbitration if we just feel like we're just not getting, if either party feels like they're just not getting to a point where they feel comfortable agreeing to terms. And as Frank mentioned last month, nobody wants that, because then you're putting it in the hands of a third party that ultimately is probably going to decide something that nobody likes, right? And in this particular instance, the collective bargaining part of it can be repealed by the voters. And so I know that there was conversation around the measures that were passed not being able to be repealed. That is true with civil service, but not true for collective bargaining. And so collective bargaining could be repealed following the same process that was followed to establish it, meaning a certain amount of signatures could be gathered to request it be put on the ballot. So some next steps as it relates to the collective bargaining piece. Per the law, we need to recognize the Fire Association as the official bargaining agent. That won't be a problem with us because we only have one association with the fire department that I know of. But in some larger cities, this can be an issue because many large organizations sometimes have multiple associations. And so the city must officially designate a association to be that bargaining agent. And that's just a letter that can be sent back and forth, just confirming that. But that's an important step. And then, of course, we'll start negotiations. And this also has to be fully implemented within 30 days of the new fiscal year. But again, just think of it as something that should be a priority for us to finalize before the end of our current fiscal year. And how we kind of mesh all that together, I've already alluded to the fact that it makes sense over the next couple of months to focus on the appointment of the commission. And so that's what I show here taking place over the months of November and December. In January, as I mentioned, I'll bring forward for confirmation the 3 individuals at the first meeting in January. And I suspect that by the end of January, we'll conduct the first Civil Service Commission. We asked our outside legal counsel on their opinion on time commitment and how much time it might take to set everything up. He recommends that the commission meet twice a month and that it could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to set it all up. Just depends on how much back and forth there might be between the group. And so that's quite a bit of meetings that whomever serves on the Civil Service Commission will have to commit to for the first half of the year, basically. Now, hopefully, we're more on the 4-month side of that equation, right? And we can get it done in the spring timeframe. I mentioned in this timeline, don't hold me to it because there's a lot of factors that may change this, but I felt it was appropriate to at least give you a sense of when we might be able to start the collective bargaining negotiations. For purposes of illustration, I've showed some time frame in March and April, just to give you a sense of our priorities. I think it makes sense, again, to focus setting up the Civil Service Commission first, get that off the ground, focus on that over the next few months, and then once we get past, the first several meetings of the Civil Service Commission, and we can get in some kind of a groove, then maybe it makes sense for us at that time frame then to start formal bargaining negotiations with the association. We will have to formally appoint a negotiations team, and so we can have that conversation, when we get there. But that would be part of the process. My hope would be that in May, June timeframe, we'll be able to finalize setting up the Civil Service Commission. And then maybe a month or 2 after that, we can finalize and approve the collective bargaining agreement. I think it makes sense to try and coincide that with our budget, since obviously a big part of, not the only part, but a big part of the bargaining negotiations will have a monetary impact. And so with that, happy to take any other questions you might have on either of those topics.
If I may jump in, and I apologize for not having the exact language prepared earlier. I'm still learning all of this as y'all are. It's actually commissioners may only be removed for misconduct in office, and that requires a finding to be made by city council to remove them. And at that time, the commissioner may request a hearing at an open meeting. That's how that process works.
Thank you, Ms. Lacy.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't sound easy.
Yeah, that's a process, like all of it is. So any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Garza, thank you for the information. I believe that concludes city manager's reports. We will have a short executive session, correct?
Yes.
All right, so it is 6:43. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we will reconvene into executive session.
The City Council recessed for executive session on the 18th day of November 2025 at 6:43. Subject matter is as follows: Texas Government Code 551.087, 551.072, and 551.071.